Now, representing on behalf of Hudson.
It's quite clear on those, the one of the reasons they don't want to know. Yes, the whole office, so that's what they want to know. Tonight, yeah.
The initial proposals of the representation review. Just a few reminders for those who have joined us following the lunch break. The emergency exits saw that you came in and the door behind me. We do need to evacuate the building. Please use one of these exits and assemble outside by the playground. Please remain at the assembly area until the building has been confirmed. And in the event we experience any unruly or intimidating behaviour from members of the public during the course of the meeting, we will adjourn until it is safe for us to return. This meeting is also being live streamed and will be available to view on Council's YouTube channel. And as just a final reminder, you will note that we are not a full committee today. So following this meeting, I will confirm with members not in attendance at the hearings today that they have viewed the oral submissions prior to deliberations, as per the Local Government Commission guidelines on the representation review. So we'll kick off the afternoon session with the Martin Borough Community Board. So welcome to Val and Storm. For the members of the committee, you will find the Martin Borough Community Board submission on page 240 of the full submission pack, or page 14 of today's hearing pack. You have 10 minutes to present to the committee today. Your allocated time includes both presentation time and time for any questions. So please do leave us some time to ask clarifying questions at the end, and for members' reference. That is all we can do today. Unfortunately, just questions of clarification. So start and you are ready.
Great. So I'm going to take our submission as read, but I would like to, for those who go to page 17, to point to Council's Standing Order 1.2, which is community boards. And that is that the standing orders note that while governing bodies operate under formal standing orders, which define how often a member may speak to a matter and tightly prescribes the input of the public, community boards should operate in a more open and inclusive manner, reflecting their role to provide opportunities for public engagement, because their role is to act as an intermediary between the councils and their community boards. Community boards should avoid replicating the formality that characterises the way in which other councils' governing bodies operate. So, and this is something that comes back to us all the time, is about our accessibility, availability, and just that willingness, because people know how to find us as well. So they voted for all of us because they know us well. So I would also like to say that at the Martin Borough Community Board public meeting that we held on Payne Estate, the Right Honourable Wyatt Creech spoke as a member of the Martin Borough Borough Council at the time that the three councils amalgamated to form SWDC. He advised the meeting that the Martin Borough Council had refused to amalgamate at Featherston and Greytown unless a mechanism to ensure Payne Estate remained with the people of Martin Borough only could be created. The mechanism finally chosen was to create a Martin Borough Community Board, which would hold the responsibilities of governing Payne Estate. The South Oropa District Council has not any alternative to the people of Martin Borough for the responsibility of Payne Estate and alternative management. So anything that would ensure it remains with the people of Martin Borough only, thereby meeting the bequest of George Payne himself. For this alone, we feel South Wairarapa District Council are obligated to retain the Martin Borough Community Board as its agreed governor of Payne Estate for the people of Martin Borough. The return of incorrect allocation of Payne Estate money to the tune of $300,000 this year shows that the mechanism of the Martin Borough Community Board retaining responsibility for Payne Estate is more valid now than ever. All the other amazing work that the Martin Borough Community Board undertakes are in addition to our responsibility as the governors for Payne Estate. Recently, our Martinborough Community Board won a national award for community boards at the Localism Awards for Local Government held in Wellington. Now, this is actually, we are holding on Saturday another emergency management session so that people understand how to work in the event of an emergency. And I would highly recommend to our councillors to please attend on Saturday to see what it looks like when the hill's shut, what it looks like when we're flooded in, what it looks like when it's you that people are going to look to for help in those times of emergencies. We also just yesterday, we received an email from our Community Board Executive Committee advising how hard they're currently working to lift the profile for community boards across the islands. Now, community boards are currently smashing it, and they are more relevant today than ever because we bring localism to life. Community boards offer a localism done well solution to many of the pressing issues we all face in this time of rapid change and confounding complexity. We are so much more than a section from the Local Government Act. We are local people serving our communities, working with the power of love and not a love of power. We feel it is shameful the government chose to take away local decision making from you, and that councils need to ensure they are not exhibiting that same behaviour that has occurred with them towards their boards and communities. To honour Te Tiriti o Waitangi, to include all voices, to listen to the vulnerable and the unheard. These are the jobs of your local community boards and play a major role in making sure that everybody is heard when they need to. Yeah, come on to.
Have we done?
Are you done?
Yes.
You're speaking as well still?
No, I'm speaking first.
No, really, I didn't want to cut anybody off.
No.
Any questions from the members, please? Councillor Olds.
Thanks for that, Mel. That was really heartwarming to hear the work that you've actually done. If at the end of the day, and we've heard some speakers earlier on this morning talk about community boards and their functionality and so on and so forth, do you see another mechanism to represent the Payne Farm interests in particular, other than a community board?
We would like to see recommendations come from your table with, you know, what you would like to see. There are other mechanisms. We understand that there's legal information that is coming to your table as well as to our table around that, and hopefully that legal information will give us all an idea on what we can do to ensure the longevity of the bequest, because it is so beneficial and has already been so beneficial for decades now.
Yeah, sorry. I just in terms of representation, and particularly on Payne Farm issues, community board have got that role or have assumed that role. If community boards didn't exist, do you see an opportunity for another group to be established, for instance, that was solely responsible for overseeing Payne Farm and not necessarily connected to?
I would have an expectation that if anything happened to the Martinborough Community Board, which was the agreed mechanism for the Martinborough Borough Council to amalgamate with South Wairarapa District Council, that options for alternatives are put forward for the people of Martinborough to decide what they want and how they wish to be represented.
Great, thanks very much, Mel. Appreciate it.
Sorry, can I just say to that? Sorry. It could be in the form of the trust, whatever happens to the trust.
Yep.
That could be in some other form that it's currently in, or may have a variety of things within that trust.
Yep.
So it's not the Martinborough Community Board, it could well be a trust.
Yeah, that's great. I'm pleased to hear that. Thanks, Dawn.
So, Councillor Bosley.
Thanks, Chair. Thank you. Thanks, Mel, for a really impassioned presentation and speech. I've got two questions. The first one sort of follows on from Councillor Olds, was if there was another mechanism there, such as the Martinborough Community Board was kept and therefore it was a targeted rate to the people of Martinborough, how that would sit. And the other one is, no criticism of your presentation, as I could hear the passion in your voice there, but feels me compared with also your submission that this is your opinion. what
Uh,
effort, where's the data? Like, what efforts did you go to consult with the community to back up the submission that you've made? Because there's no evidence here of any community discussion, feedback or anything. There's just a cut and paste from section Standing Order 1.2.
Yep.
And what mechanisms did you use to go and consult with the community?
So we actually went out to large number of our communities. We provided submission forms. We asked people to look at how they felt about representation review. We certainly didn't just talk about community boards because that's not what this is about. It's actually about whether or not people want to see changes at your table and how they wish to be represented. So I only speak with the information that I've received externally from the board, and these are things that we have all discussed in meetings. It's things that have been discussed with our community. We held a public meeting specifically on Payne Estate so that people would understand about Payne Estate and what it's there for and how it works.
So one more question, sorry.
Yeah.
Was how many of your board are elected and how many were appointed as a result of, how many people were you elected onto the board, or was
So there were 5 people who wished to be put forward for nominations from Martin Borough. There was an error that occurred at council level, which meant that one of the people wasn't able to stand at the time that it went to election. That is why the 4 of us were automatically appointed into our roles.
Okay,
But this is also my second training.
well, thank you.
Councillor, can I just add one more, just to fill in what we did. We, as the community board, we delivered posters and forms to retail and to the private sector to
Okay.
encourage them to submit their responses to it.
That's great, because none of that is indicated in the submission, so that's right. That's why I was asking, like, what did you do? Yeah.
That's lovely.
I think one of the things that I would really love to see is that that the councillors take what the community boards advise them as the information coming from their communities, because that's what we're there for. The information we give you is the information that we gather, and I think it's about trust at your table that the information that you're receiving is correct, and you can count on that from the Martin Borough Community Board.
Lovely. Thank you, Mel.
Thanks, Mel. Thank you.
We just take 2 seconds to say congratulations on your award, and specifically to Angela for all that.
Yeah.
And really, it's the, I would come on Saturday if you can, because it's incredible. And the power of the people, the community, when they come through and look out for one another, it's amazing, it's beautiful.
Good. My next person on the list is Mary, but I don't think she's here, which makes the next person on my list you.
Oh, good.
You don't.
You are.
It's going to get ejected.
Oh, there he is, found it.
Uh,
Page 21.
Page 156 for the
21.
map, or page 21 for the for today.
So good afternoon, everybody. Look, I'm not going to talk to my submission. I just want to talk about one aspect, if I may. The aspect is we go down the track of having 2 at-large members. Could we not possibly have one of those at least come from the rural sector? I think the rural sector is lacking in input. I think their voice is being heard through some frustration that is coming from within the community. And maybe that would be a better way of getting them involved by having them in that position. So I'm not sure what the outcome is going to be, but if it did come to having 2 at-large elected members, it will not have at least one of those coming from the rural sector. So that's the extent of what I was going to talk about, but I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Yeah, thanks very much, Storm. Yeah, so can you perhaps answer or define what a rural sector representative would mean? Because I live in an RD address and there's a number of our councillors live in RD addresses.
5, yeah.
So I just, 5 is there, yeah. So I'm just, are we trying to capture beef and lamb or dairy or,
It is that sector in particular where we're getting a lot of squeak from.
Sure.
And that's what.
And we know that.
And that's what I'd say, can we do anything to get them involved? Now, if we offer them the opportunity and they don't take it, well, they can't really be critical in the future. So I'm just sort of saying, maybe some people from that deep sector, if they could be encouraged to step forward, if the opportunity was there, that would be a good outcome for everybody. At least they'd get a voice in the channel they could put it.
Yeah.
I'm not I'm not criticising anybody on the council. I know a lot of work goes on from councillors with rural sector. The thing that's missing is nobody's got a dairy hat or a dairy flag that they want.
Absolutely right. Appreciate that. Thanks, Phil.
Storm, and like you, I don't know which way this representation review will go. There's many steps left to it yet. If a rural ward does not eventuate, do you think there are other meaningful ways for the rural sector to participate or to engage with council? Particularly when we say rural, but what we actually mean is kind of remote rural and that farming sector rather than just people who live a wee way away from town.
I have had a look at this, and when you put rural into it, you think about far away. The technology is now around where they don't have to sit around the table. They can be present without being here, if you know what I mean. And so even in a community board sector, you know, I would like to see maybe if we can't get anybody in council, maybe we can get somebody on the local board, should they be still in existence, that maybe somebody on the local board could give us that remote rural input into a community board, which we can in turn feed into council.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dawn. But my question is just regarding your final statement on question 12, which was we should improve its communication process with ratepayers. Now, you say here the one thing council should do is improve its communication process with ratepayers.
Yeah.
What area do you think we are lacking right now?
Look, I just think there is a lack of communication. Now, it's very hard to define what communication is and how it can be achieved. But I think, and I'm trying to do this with staff as well, is when we have an issue, take it there, sort it out, and then deliver what the outcome is, so that we're talking about those sort of things. The same applies with the community. If the community put their hand up with a problem, maybe councillors have got to say, that's my job and I'll go and deal with that one. It's that communication, and it could take any number of forms. It could be just through an email, it could be through social media, it could be through personal contact. And that's what I'd just say, just improve the communications. We get a lot of complaints that community puts information into the council and get nothing back from it. And that's, I have to say sometimes that's not quite true. Maybe they didn't get the answer they wanted, but that could be because they didn't get it discussed at the right level or with the right person and getting the right information back that explains the situation.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks very much.
Thank you.
We are running ahead of time, but next on the list is Alistair Kennedy.
They're here? No, they're not here.
Too far ahead of time. Order about 5-10 minutes. Okay, so adjourn for 5 minutes. We'll just take a 5-minute adjournment because we are running ahead of time and we need to wait for our next presenter. So everyone just take a comfort break, whatever you need.
Oh, well, I'm going to have another sandwich, I guess.
Yes. Lovely, thank you for that brief adjournment. Jenny, we will pick up with you again, if that's okay, so come and join us.
Thank you.
Lovely to see you. Jenny, you have 10 minutes to speak to us this morning, but this afternoon, we would love to have some time to speak to you and ask you some questions at the end. So if you could use maybe 5 or 6 minutes, that would be great. Please take your submission as read, but please provide context or extra information as you see fit.
Cool. Okay. Do you know what number my submission is?
Well, in that one, you are page number 25.
25, yeah.
Sorry. I've done it before Beacon B and I've just finished. Okay. Thanks. Okay. Well, thank you for allowing me to speak anyway. So I'm basically here to support both Jim Headley and Dan Rutherford's submission for a rural ward as opposed to at-large ward. And the reason I know same people could be standing, so our biggest hurdle probably is to try and get 3 people in the rural area to actually stand, but we just feel there's too much of a disconnect and there's too much work for if you go down to 222, you're going to go down, as the councillors that came to visit us at the hall said, they've already got a big workload because if anything like we've got to put up with doing other things for different agencies, just that I think 10 would be ideal as opposed to 9. And yeah, we fully support the Māori ward in that way, but I think that we'd rather see, because we've got 3 towns still and you're never going to get that changed to just one district-wide place because it just doesn't happen in villages. Around the world, it'd be good to have 2 in the urban and 1 in the rural ward for each area. Basically, yes. Yep, it's me.
Any questions for Jenny, Councillor Olds?
Yeah, I just want some clarity on your sort of vision of a rural ward in particular, and how would you see the makeup of that? Well, how would it be beefing? I mean, you can't define a rural ward as being solely a hill country farmer.
That's right. So
how would you select the right candidate at the end of the day that represents the interests of sheep and beef farmers, dairy farmers, and so on?
You just put somebody up and hope. It's like, how do you select a prime minister or a governor? You just have to hope that whatever puts their name up is going to. And also, in saying that, the people that the urban councillors are also very farm orientated or very rural orientated. But we just feel if we've got a rural voice, we're not going to. Yeah, at least we're trying to be democracy.
You couldn't do that through an advisory group as such, where you select the people, for instance, that would be appointed onto that.
See that advisory group. I sat on the Wellington Regional Council advisory group, and it was really good. But that was political appointments almost. Like you got appointed who they wanted on,
okay.
And then your next triennium, you got a different group of people, which is also good because I think after 3 years, sometimes you want a bit of a refresh because you might be, it's like anything. Yes, it's like clubs. You might not have to. Yeah, it's good to have a change at the top every now and again. So too long or boards, but I just feel as though if we can have a rural representative, a rural lifestyle, it doesn't matter whether horticulture or anything like that, but just somebody that's out in the country somewhere rather than, because I just feel as though the urban wards now have to concentrate on the water and the infrastructure and all the other things that go on.
Yep. Absolutely right.
And so therefore it's like we're pretty good out there because we're pretty much, the rural area looks after itself pretty much, but I think now that the rating is now, before the rates weren't such a big high on income, but now the rates take up a big chunk of our income.
Yeah.
They want bang for their buck sort of thing. Yeah.
Thanks, Jenny.
I have a question for you. The current makeup, and I acknowledge that it will always be different, but the current makeup of councillors, 4 or 5 councillors who are rural already. I worry that a rural board may not solve the problem that you're trying to solve. So I guess what I'm saying is if 5 rural representatives already currently aren't solving the problem, how will having someone who stands in a specific rural ward solve the problem of representation, do you think?
We can only hope that they are resolving, because I think that you are resolving. I think the 5 here, 5 or got 5, whatever. I think that they are. You're doing your best you possibly can, And anyone that puts their name up and puts themselves forward is doing, we'd like to think they're here for doing the best they can for our area. So there's no one's absolutely useless. I mean, everyone's going to learn something, and also you learn along the way too. And everyone thinks that you can change things and you can't, because it just doesn't work like that. I understand that, but all we can do is have a voice. Yeah. So that's the main reason.
Yeah, so can I assume but by having a rural ward, you're trying to ensure that that makeup always exists, and that's just sort of a.
So, yeah. It becomes super city.
Super City.
Any questions for Jenny? No, thank you, Jenny.
Thanks, Jenny. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Look, can I just say, I'm sorry about the school, but to answer some of your questions, if you had a dedicated rural.
Oh, sorry, I'd love to.
Yeah.
If we go into that
Yeah.
part, yeah, we'll talk later. We haven't, Louise is here. Louise is here? Yeah, she's just coming in. Just.
Hang fire for a couple of secs.
Afternoon. Join us.
Yeah, I'm Neil Morrison, fellow member of the community board, Graham. Could I ask the councillors and Mr Mayor to give her 5 minutes to relax or settle in? Sure.
Sure.
Understood.
Louise was under the impression that she was starting in the 1 o'clock bracket. And
We are running slightly ahead of time. Yeah.
Sorry, I was just over the hill.
When you're ready, feel free to
Right.
shuffle your papers, take a breath and start. We won't start your time as we wouldn't anyone's until you're ready. So,
With Luke?
yes, so as everyone knows, you have got 10 minutes to present, but we would love to have a few minutes at the end to be able to ask you clarifying questions. For the members, the Greytown Community Board submission is page 285 of the main pack 48 of today's hearing. So when you are ready, feel free to kick off. Take your submission as read, but please feel free to speak to it as you desire.
Well, thank you. As Neil introduced himself, I'm Louise Brown. I've had the honor of being the chair of the Greytown Community Board. The Greytown Community Board made submissions solely on the point of the continuation and the importance of maintaining community boards. While I appreciate that they are part of the current representation model going forward, they are up for consideration, as we know. And I think that one of the reasons that question was on the representation review was to see going forward what the support was. Obviously, the community boards in our minds are quite crucial. I do feel that the community boards have been underutilized, and I think you can see that through my submissions. And I do think that there is room for the community boards to have more opportunity to work better with council and to support council. I can continue to speak to my submissions, but I sort of feel like if you've read my submissions, I'd actually rather open it up to questions. I have to be honest, I think there's some questions that, I mean, there's a lot of people who have strong opinions about this, so I'd rather be answering those questions. If that's all right, happy to.
It's your 10 minutes, so we can roll this however you like. And if we ask some questions and then you think, oh, actually, I'd like to speak to something else, then you can do that as well.
Thanks, Louise. Thanks for presenting, and sorry to put you under pressure, but you just talk about better communication succeed. How, if we were to start from a greenfields with community boards, for instance, how would you see the functionality of community boards and their representative role back to council? What would you change?
I think the first thing I would change would probably be our induction. I'm going to be honest. I think there needs to be a lot more. It's not just sort of about kind of, we had sort of an introduction to things, but I think that in what part would have been more helpful, because to understand really where we could be utilized or where we could help you. I feel that the Greytown Community Board was entirely new. None of us had ever been on board or had been elected. And for that reason, we had to really figure out what we were going to do and how we were going to do it. I think we had perceptions of where we fit and then kind of found out we didn't and had to then figure out where to go from there. So we've really tried to focus a lot on responding to communications from the community about interests. Obviously, that comes from when they come and see us. But I do think that would be good. I put in my submissions where I think cross training and cross relationships. I mean, ultimately, I get to know everybody. We meet everybody at the beginning, but we're all sort of new. And then you kind of know each other, but you don't really know each other. So I think that creates sort of a disconnect. So you become sort of reliant on the connections that you obviously have with your counselors to kind of communicate back. But we also bring new skills. I mean, you know, I know you have a lot of representation seen about rural. Well, you know, the community board is actually, our community board is actually made up of 4 rural members. So, you know, we actually represent a lot of different aspects in those sort of things. And I was thinking forward, because I know you guys look at your representation, I was thinking, how could Greytown Community Board assist next year? Well, given that there's been that interest about that rule and the fact that we do have 4 members that are rural, that could be something that community boards could be utilized to actually get more into the rural community, make sure they're feeling heard, doing something like that. Those are things that we can be done. I think that the council could be tasking the community board with more of those efforts. I know it's important and I think it's great that you guys want to hear straight from the community, but you have a lot to do and we actually could be utilized more in the community for that. And so that would be something that I think would help with how to utilize it. I see us as kind of, we are to be the ones who communicate back. So we are the ones who should be able to community. I mean, Neil is 5 generations of farming. You know, we have skills, we have knowledge, we have connections. Utilize that and realize that. And so when you see the needs of the requests, come to us. I just think that that's why I feel like that we should be working more together in that impact of having that communication, you know, and I'm probably better now this year. Last year I was learning, this year I kind of know what we're doing. Next year I've got big plans for our board, but I think maybe I'm better now saying, hey, you know, I think I knock on a lot more doors now than I did. I probably would have knocked on them sooner if I kind of felt that comfort to do that.
Thanks for that, Louise. Appreciate it.
I've got several questions, but I'll keep checking back to see if anybody else has got a question as well. A earlier presenter today suggested that the fact that we don't see competitive elections within the community boards is a strong indicator that the community is kind of open. They're not supportive. Do you have any advice or insight on what we, the collective we, can do to strengthen the candidacy process for the community boards?
I think that, in fairness, and I've said it before, I think, like for instance, for the Greytown Community Board, there was probably some not so positive press, and when we went for things, there was questions about that, which hasn't pertained coming forward. I think that's kind of where the council could help more. I think people will be dismissive, are more dismissive of community boards if they don't see that they matter to council. So we are supposed to be bringing and heard and ideally have a voice that's going to be recognized. And if that's not being given back, then I think that dismissiveness kind of spreads out into the community. So I would say if this council commits and has shown its commitment to community boards going forward, I would like to see council support that role and that it is key in the community. And then of course, the community board members need to get out there and do that. And we need to talk about it more. I mean, I didn't know what the community board did. I just knew I wanted to be involved. And that seemed like the appropriate level to come in. Now that I'm part of it, I can see how important they are and I can see what they could be. So a lot of it is getting in and learning about it. So possibly, that more structure, that more connection, that more ability, that this is what they can do, then we can explain that. Then you're selling it out there and people understand what they're gonna do and what it's about. But otherwise, they're just like, what it is, what's the point? What do they do? What impact do they have? Well, unless we have impact, unless we're clear on what we do, it is gonna be hard to sell. So.
Do you think that given that this is a broad generalisation, most people on the community boards have other commitments, family, jobs, etc., and that the remuneration is so tiny, that it is fair and realistic to really build the role of the community board up and use it to its very fullest potential, so that it can be utilized? Do you see that actually that, yeah, is that fair?
No, that makes sense. The remuneration had nothing to do with the role. Does the role take far more as a chair than I anticipated? Yes. Probably helps that no, I don't have young kids or family to do that. But I think if you choose to commit to your community, then you choose to give that time. I live in Greytown. We have an amazing volunteer group there that give up countless hours at a time with kids and families to do things. So I can't see how that is much different. I mean, in so many ways, what the community board is doing is often trying to help those situations and those groups. So I think that it's not really about that remuneration. I think if you're going to commit, you're going to commit. And if you're one of those people who finds the time to do a million things in a very short period of time, then you're destined for this role. And the councillors know, you know.
Very well. Let me finish off with one question.
Very quick question. If we were in a situation where we didn't have community boards now, and then they've never existed, and we are in the current economic climate that we are in, where we're being given directions from the government to try and cut our cloth as much as possible, line by line, reduce our spending. If we didn't already have community boards, would you be advocating for standing them up and starting them?
Absolutely. I hear people behind saying yes. I am going to say yes to that one. I think when you look at sort of what community boards actually sort of cost, as you just said, there's not a whole lot that comes our direction. So I think those resources that you would try to have, that resource, that whatever that money, whatever those posters, whatever that is, that's still going to be spent and that's still going to be utilized. I think you actually get more free work than you think through what we actually do, because we do countless hours to get groups together, to do things, to do that. I mean, we really do mostly volunteer work, in all honesty. So I think, though, that what I think is important, which I think gets lost when there's those suggestions about, oh, you can be this group or this group and they can come and see. The community board is meant to be a voice for the community. We are meant to come to you and to be heard. And when that's not being heard, that does weaken us. But that is, we are that role. And because we have that role, I think that's what's important and why it should be and why it should be out. So why do I think there should be? Because I think there should be someone who sits in that government role, who has that pressure or that point or that power, quite frankly, to speak to the community, to remind the council what it's about and what is important. So, and what else is out there. And also to do the things that councillors can't, you can't actually cover everything. You just can't. And to do that, you know, I mean, we have a delegated role, and I think we're the only board that has a delegated role to have a stakeholders meeting with our parks and reserves. Well, that's a delegated role that we should have, because we are meant to, and it is kind of behind what should. And we're trying to really take that role seriously and really make that be something, because it did fall apart and we brought it back. So that to me is an example of something that a community board should be doing, can be doing in a citizen council. So yeah, I think it should be out there.
So it is a justified cost to the community because of the value that the community gets back out of the hours.
I think so.
Great. Thank you very much. Thank you both for being here and valuable time. Thank you for speaking on behalf of the Greytown Community Board and its community.
It's a little presentation.
Yeah. Done a very.
Thanks.
Thanks.
But it's all there for community, so.
People on.
That's a very hard presentation.
Hello.
Fantastic to hear people give really good quality presentations.
Well, Warren, you started.
Got,
It's your town now, but you started.
you've got 10 minutes to present, but we'd love to have some time at the end to ask you questions. So go for your life.
Right, well, hopefully I'll be really concise, so it won't take too long. So thank you for allowing me to speak. So today I'd like to talk about unintended consequences of what we're looking at. And if we look at council elections, there's some things we know that they're low turnout, they're low cost if you want to run as a candidate, and there's low name recognition. So if you want to run for council, it's pretty easy if you're motivated, have a little bit of money that you can get on board. And that's relevant when we look at what you're proposing. So if I understand this correctly, there's two options. One is we will remove a councillor and place a Maori ward in, and option two is we add a Maori ward. Now, on the face of it, option one seems like the best thing to do because we save money, and everybody wants to save money, as you were just discussing, line by line. We hear it all the time. We hear the government saying it, but let's now look at the facts. So on option one, at the moment, any town can only get 4 elected representatives. They can get the mayor, they can get their 3 councillors. Under your new option, you can get the mayor, you can get the Maori ward, you can get the councillor at large, you can get the second councillor at large, you can get your ward, and you can get your other ward. So any town can all of a sudden control 6 councillors out of 10. And I would say, regardless of anything else you've heard today, that is an unhealthy democracy. If we go to option two, you get the mayor, you get the Maori ward, and you get 3 councillors. You get 5 out of 11, and that keeps a good democracy. And so why is it relevant? It's relevant because when you think about who you know, it's within your community. You look at, say, take Martinborough, for example, I have a great network here. So it's very easy for me to bring 6 people together to run for council if I have a particular project or any reason that I want to control council. Under option two, I can't do that. And that really is the fundamental difference here. And that's all I want to focus on today. Option one allows someone to control it. Now, is that relevant? And I would say to you it is, and the easiest way to describe it to you is something that's incredibly widely known is the US Supreme Court. It's currently, I think it was 6-3 Republican, and all their work is slowly slanting just a little bit to the right. It still functions, people still accept it, but they're not really getting what they want. If we have 6 councillors from 1 ward, it leaves the chance where we're not really going to get what we want, and we might all of a sudden get another town hall, or we might get a fancy multi-million-dollar park. Or, we're going to get things that line by line we would never approve. So please, let's look at the unintended consequences of option one and discount it. We talk about community boards. I'm really staggered that we're having this conversation. When I read in the media and I listen to you councillors speak, you hear we're overworked and underpaid. And I've heard that for 20 years. And I think that is the most genuine statement any councillor, anywhere in the country can say. You are overworked, you are underpaid. Same with the community board. It's a given. I know a lot of people in being in the building. I know a lot of people in council, and they're under pressure. We know that as well. So we have people under pressure. We have overworked, underpaid councillors. And now you're talking about getting rid of one of the best assets you've got, which is completely underutilised, and that's the community board. So if I was allowed to do one thing with the community board, just one thing, I'd ask them to do this. Every 3 months, I'd ask for the head of roading to meet with the community board chairs, outline the program and say, this is what our planned maintenance is for the next 6 months or the next 9 months. Go and have your chat with your community boards, with the community, come back and talk to me in 6 months, and we will sign off and make sure that goes, and we spend our money wisely. If you were to ask me, are we spending our money wisely now? I'd say absolutely not. I live in Grey Street here in Martinborough. It's beautifully resealed. Thank you very much. Much appreciated. Complete waste of money. You talk to anybody in Grey Street, they will tell you, why on earth did we reseal this road? There is so much more we need to do. We have a sewage pond that doesn't work, and we went and resealed the road, that no potholes, no excessive wear of the chip. And then you look at Jellicoe Street. We replaced a whole section of what was ugly guttering. Why? Is the road going to stop functioning? Was it that necessary? Could we realise that money better? Are you getting community buy-in to these projects? And I'd say no. Those two projects have been ridiculed out in the community. Your community board is your capacity to speak to the community, so you as councillors and as the hierarchy in the council can say, this is where we're planning to go. What do people think about it? And you can push that information out 9 months ahead, and then you can get information back and you can make better informed decisions. And I bet if you asked anybody rural about their roading, how their money is being spent, could it be spent better? I reckon if we put it through the community board and they have buy-in, you would have a much, much better result. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Just quickly, those, only those on the Māori roll can vote for those in the Māori ward. So that means that those in the general roll can only vote for 5 people. So they wouldn't vote the 6th member that you're talking about.
But that 6th person.
So just to clarify that your position.
I understand that. It's absolutely, it wouldn't change. Why would it change? It's an at-large position, so you're voting across the whole community.
You can only elect.
That's right. But the amount, I mean, I don't want to get into some sort of racist discussion.
No, it's just.
I know Maori people, and I know Maori people that live in Martinborough. It doesn't matter if they're Maori or non-Maori, we all have the same wants. So if you have people that want a new town hall, you run a Maori person from Martinborough for the Maori ward.
It's a Martinborough community person.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how you.
I was just.
And I understand where you're coming from.
Because
Martinborough Māori ward.
on the general electoral roll, I can only vote for 5 people. So it's just checking that your position still.
It doesn't change it at all.
So any other questions?
No, thanks for that clarity on that.
Thank you.
Right.
Thank you, Dean.
Great, thanks, Dean.
We will consider your feedback during
Lovely,
deliberation.
thank you.
Dan, before you take a seat down the back, why don't you take a seat and join us? We're running ahead of time. We'd love to hear from you now.
Spectacular.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, that's perfect timing.
Very efficient.
Page 47.
So for members of the committee, Dan's submission is on page 270 of the full pack, or page 47 of the hearing pack.
Oh. Yeah.
When you were ready, you have 10 minutes to present, but we would love to have a minute or two to ask you some questions at the end. So if you're getting towards that 8-minute mark, I'll give you a signal just so that you can wrap up and we can have time for a question or two at the end.
Good afternoon, everyone. The simple proposition that I would raise is what violence would it do to the council's plan if instead of having a ward at large in your documents, you simply said a rural ward? Very simple change, but a significant change for those living in the area. The economic times have borne hardest on the rural sector, and so a gesture like that is positive and reinforcing. We only request the change of a word what the population would dictate 3 rural wards, but for my part, if it were 2 rural wards, that would be a step in the right direction. Now, take the logic used by the Council for Maori wards as a community of interest, and I don't dispute that. But word for word, phrase for word, phrase, why not apply the same logic towards a rural ward? If anything, rural people are in a council sense more distinct than our Maori people. After all, Maori people largely live in town and so look to the council for all the backup services. But rural people do for themselves, with the exception of the road. I point out in my submission that not only the representation provisions, but other provisions such as the rating provision requires that the council consider the communities of interest in their midst. We as rural people have been brushed under the table in dividing the area symmetrically between Martinborough, Greytown and Featherston without any consideration of community of interest and sense of purpose, and that's what all legislation points us towards. I say finally that there is legislation under which you are operating. It does have an appeal provision, so I would urge that you revisit the legislation and think of the good that would be done by saying, yes, we'll have rural wards. Now, to be clear about it, for my part, any person could apply to represent such a rural ward. It doesn't need to be a sheep and cattle farm. It could be a retired restaurateur from Greytown. Could be anyone. Could be anyone. The point is that they would obviously get their head around the needs of rural people and do a very good job. I have, if we talk of community of interest, brought with me the 1863 and 1864 diaries for Tarwhite Station. I simply argue that if this is about community of interest, if this is about culture, we people in the hill country have a lot of built-in generational culture. Don't discount that lightly. Thank you.
Excellent.
Dan, I'm going to jump in by asking you a question, but I'm sure others have got one as well. This current council has 5 councillors who live rurally, depending on your definition, but certainly by a postal definition. How do you imagine that we would define, or where would we define a boundary for rural in your mind? Given that
council wards have always been somewhat of a juggle, it's pretty arbitrary. The town boundary at the moment, I understand, still goes through Ward Street. And if you look to right or left of you, you'd be a bit puzzled to see where all the sheep and cattle have gone. Where my mother lives at Rimahanga Farm, just across the bridge, well, in a very arbitrary way, we've been Greytown people. Not that we've ever thought that way, but we've had to vote that way. So it is arbitrary, and in that sense, I say, well, this turnaround, if there were 2 rural wards rather than 3, I'm not making a big song and dance about it. But I do think that the council, this is getting off the topic, of course, could make the town boundaries a little bit more sensible than they presently are.
Any other questions for Dan?
Totally agree.
Yes, totally agree, yeah.
No other
Just
questions?
like to put them straight on one factor, I believe, he was referring to Mr. Bosley as a retired restaurateur. I'm pretty sure Mr. Bosley would say he's not retired.
Wonderful, thank you.
He's taking it as a compliment.
I won't stay.
Yeah, your time, as always. Thank you for being with us and thank you for your submission. We will certainly take your feedback and submission into account, as along with all others when we meet to deliberate.
Thank you.
Really good.
Awesome, mate. Thank you.
And as much as I would love to look at your 1860 diaries, I feel like it would be a terrible thing to put greasy little fingers all over them.
Yeah, God, yeah.
But a very special thing indeed.
Culture matters. Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Thanks, Dan.
That to the end of our oral submissions this afternoon. It does bring us to the hearings report, which was part of your agenda pack for today. We do have Nikki and Rob with us if you have any questions. Members, do we have any questions about the report for our officers today? Was the report kind of just summarises how we got where we are today. And as a reminder, the timeframe for deliberations is October 2nd at the SWC meeting scheduled that day, and a full deliberations report will be prepared by the officers for the meeting and the rest of the plan. So it doesn't look like we've got any questions.
No questions,
No
no.
questions. We do have some recommendations. So that one is to receive the full set of submissions on the representation review initial proposal. Note that 129 submissions were received. Note that the received submissions, 12 are confirmed heard, but that's a lot.
12 is correct.
12 is
We've gone up and down.
up and down.
12 are correct today, yeah.
Note that the deliberations are scheduled for 2 October 2024. I am happy to move that, do I? As the mayor will second that. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
All those against, no. The motion is carried. Which does bring us to the end of our meeting, and as Councillor Gray opened us with a karakia, ask her to please also close. I can pass.
Thank you. Great, thank you very much. Great. Yeah, and I guess just to say to the chair, thank you for leading today's hearings. I think it went very smoothly, and we got to have the chance to talk the way that they did, and also a thank you to everybody who did come and present to us for the very considered responses that we've had to all of this, and so thank you. Kua mutu a mātou mahi, mō tēnei wā, manakitia mai mātou katoa, o mātou hoa, o mātou whānau, au ki te aorangi.
Kia ora.
Kia ora.
Kia ora.
Our meeting closed for today. Thank you, Rob.
Yeah, it's really